get forgiven. But I thought to myself, first of all, I didn't really resonate with that statement, but um, I thought to myself, but it didn't really start on Yom Kippur. It started on Rosh Hashanah. We people often have this relationship with Yom Kippur as like that's the day, that's the holiest day. But in a sort of more core sense, Rosh Hashanah has everything in it. Um, so, but as we said, it's a secret. It's a secret. Um, in all our beginnings, all of our potential, all of our you know journeys that we take them with a certain amount degree of emunah, of faith, because we don't know. Um, and that's how our year is supposed to start. It's supposed to start not knowing. It's supposed to start. Now, I'm going to take this a little bit deeper. There's a verse, a very famous verse that in the prayer services, we mention it in relation to Rosh Hashanah. There's a verse from the Psalms, from Tehillim. It says, Tik'u b'chodesh shofar, b'kesel yom chagenu. Blow the shofar on the new moon, on the day that our holiday is covered over. That's what it literally says. And the rabbis learn, of course, that this must be Rosh Hashanah because that's the only holiday that happens on the new moon. But what does it mean the day that our holiday is covered over? So there's a lot of different understandings, and I'm not going to sort of try to explain them all, but there's a certain sense on Rosh Hashanah of covering over, of hiding. The rabbis say, for example, the moon is hidden, because everybody knows the beginning of the month means that you see the moon for about 20 minutes, right at sunset, and then it's gone all night long. There's no moon. And we relate to this, oh, it's the new moon, it's starting to grow, but most of 95% of the night it's covered over. So which again, it's just touching that place of we don't need to know in order to feel renewal. We don't need to understand in order to feel renewal. We don't need to be we don't have to have a whole perspective in order to feel like I'm so excited because something is happening. And in fact, if we knew, we probably wouldn't be so excited. Not because it's so terrible, but because when you know something, the potential in it is limited. This is what I know. It's what this is what it is, That's why I always say this over at weddings. In our more ancient tradition, people got halachically engaged a year before they got married. What does halachically engaged means? It means what we call kiddushin. When the groom gives the bride a ring and says, okay, now we're mekudeshet, right? And that happens nowadays. Everybody knows that happens at the chuppah, but it used to happen way before, the year before, and they would then be engaged for a year. And engaged was an intense thing because you can't really be together as a married couple, but you also really not sort of shut off from your relationships with other people outside. So it's kind of like this holding period. At some point, it became clear that that's just too hard. It's too hard. So we moved up this kiddushin to be part of the marriage ceremony, right? And I always talk about this. So why is it, if we're going to get married, why do we need to get engaged? Why do you need to do kiddushin if you're going to get married? I mean, why just let's just skip over that stage of, having be expressing our intentions and connection, and just get married and be married. This is what I'm just sharing something that came to me like many years ago. And what I always say is, because being engaged is infinite. There's no boundaries. It's an intention. It's a ratzon. It's a desire. It's a expression of all the potential dream that I have. When I get married, it's not a dream anymore. It's happening. And if we were just to get married, then it would only be whatever's happening, and the dream would be gone. But we make an effort to get engaged when we get married, so that when you're married, there's still a point of the infinite potential which isn't being realized, but it's there. It's like you have one of the things I heard from Rav Shlomo on the first night I met him. He said, when you miss somebody and they're not there, he said, that's cute. Said, okay, they're not there, so you miss them. So how much do you miss them when they are there? How much do you have this feeling when you're there? We're together, but I really, really have this deep desire to be with you. Because often when we're together, so we don't miss each other. It's good. But we want to have that deep sense of there's something infinite here, and whatever it is that we're expressing, there's so much more. And whatever it is that we're doing, it's good, it's bad, it's fulfilling, it's not fulfilling, but there's more. And that infinite point is the not knowing. It's the not knowing. It's the secret. When we come to Rosh Hashanah, we're connecting with Hashem. We're connecting with God. We're saying, here we are. This is your world. You're the king. You're in charge. And here we are. We're here. And we want to be with you. And if I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I was going to get to the prayers, but if you look at the prayers, all the prayers of Rosh Hashanah are, we're dreaming of a world where everybody's with God. That's our dream. So we're here, and now, we don't know what that means. What's that going to demand of me? Where does that take us? We don't know. We don't have a clear sense of, if you're with God, so this is what it means. We don't. And sometimes that can be really heavy. I don't know. What's God, look what God did this last year. I mean, we said, okay, you know what? It's your world. Whatever you do, whatever you decide, we're with you. Oh, really? Well, you ready for this? And the answer is supposed to be yes. Ready, and I don't know. So that's beginning point, standpoint, if you want. This is where we're standing when we come into Rosh Hashanah. And that emunah, that faith that we have to go into Rosh Hashanah with, that's the fundamental point of relationship in general. It's the fundamental point of relationship with God, and it's the fundamental point of starting anything. You can't start anything if you don't have emunah, because we don't know. And someone who claims to know, I always thought about this, like there's these things, called programs like university, right? So they lay it out for you. This is what the program is, right? This is going to be 3 years, do this, you're going to have 4 years, you're going to do that. You start out, you don't know. You can plan it all out in your head, but it doesn't work that way. As I've been saying sort of lately, last few months, we don't, there's no such things as plans anymore. We have desires. I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I don't know where everybody here is living, but at least here in Israel, we don't know. We have no idea what's happening tomorrow. Um, and really, truly, nobody knows what's happening tomorrow anywhere. So, okay, I know how it works, but that's not how it works. It works by, okay. And there's another level of the secret. And this is, yet another deeper place. You see, when we talk about creation, um, Rosh Hashanah, well, let's talk about this for a second. The Torah says nothing about Rosh Hashanah. When the Torah says there's this holiday, it's going to happen on the 7th month, which if you count from Nisan, it comes to Tishrei. On the first day, you're going to blow shofar. Okay, next holiday. Every other holiday in the Torah, we know what it's about. We know why it happens. We know what it's celebrating. We know, Pesach, we got out of Egypt. Sukkot, is we were in the desert and God protected us, either gave us actual Sukkot or the clouds of glory were around us. And Yom Kippur is the day of forgiving, and we know the first Yom Kippur was when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain having forgiveness for the golden calf. And we know all about everybody, exactly what it is going on. You go, Rosh Hashanah, it just says blow the shofar. Anybody here know why we blow shofar?
Well, can am I heard?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, the very classic traditional, you know, explanation is the ram caught in the thicket.
Okay.
Um, oh, that's a traditional explanation. As
Right.
the second was
One
about to
one
be
one
sacrificed.
explanation. Yeah, it has to do with the ram. It's a ram's horn. It's the ram that was caught by when Avraham offered up Yitzchak. Nachon. Okay. Anybody else? Anything?
Like a primal call.
Primal call. Wow. Primal call, meaning a call that is pre-words, pre. It's just something that comes out, right? A voice that comes out, very strong. Yeah. I'll tell you, I once made a list of 25 reasons that are given in a sort of and this is without getting into Kabbalistic understandings and, deep spirit, just, it reminds us of Har Sinai, it reminds us of the Mashiach, it reminds us, and the craziest one, of course, is it confuses the Satan, who's our prosecutor, confuses him still after 3,500 years, still confusing him every year, whatever that is. But the Torah says nothing. It just says blow the shofar. Why? And that approach of the Torah, and again, I'm not negating all these things the rabbi said, and what a couple of things we heard here. Those are all true, and the rabbis give reasons and explanations, but the Torah is trying to say something when it says blow shofar, and I'm not going to tell you why. It's trying to say we're connecting to something here that you can't really explain. Something on Rosh Hashanah cannot be explained. And it has to do with the fact that creation cannot be explained. What does it mean that God created the world? What does it mean that God created people? what does it mean God created? I'll tell you something crazy from the Zohar. The Zohar says the first two words of the Torah are Bereshit bara. Bereshit bara, usually translated as in the beginning, God created. But if you know in the Hebrew, the word Bereshit is 6 letters. The first 3 of them are bara, right? So it's Bereshit bara. It's like the word create, says the Zohar, is actually only a partial thing. What happened before creation is bigger than the creation. Bereshit, in the beginning, is bigger than bara. Whatever it is that you experience when in a created world, whatever you experience in this world, whatever you experience when a baby is born, whatever you experience when something, it's a creative act, like you do something creative and you create something. Whatever you experience is only partial. There's a whole big reality that's way beyond what comes out. When God created the world, it means God took this infinite reality and sort of put some sense of it into a world that we meet, a world that's finite and has dimensions, and people have a certain kind of body, and there's all kinds of materials in the world, and all that is a partial gateway to understand something that's way beyond all that. Bereshit, that's before bara. So when we meet a created world, or we meet the world that we know, the real true experience is I see it, I feel it, I experience it, and it's so much more than that. And by the way, that's the way you're supposed to meet people. One of the other things I heard from Rosh Shlomo was like, the worst thing you can say about someone is, I know them like the back of my hand. It's the worst thing you can say about someone. What do you mean you know them? How do you know them? You know something. You've experienced, a certain, not just the physical, you experience, connection, emotion, you experience a sense of them. Everybody has this, these senses that are beyond the physical. Like, oh, like this feels this, but it's still extremely partial. Mostly, I don't know. And that's amazing. It's not bad. It's amazing. First of all, because you have this infinite experience of discovering new, right? If you don't know somebody, then you can discover. But if you know, I always tell my students 3 basic words that you need in order to learn anything. Anybody know the 3 basic words? I don't know. I can't learn anything if I can't say I don't know. It gets complicated in Hebrew because there's 2 versions of it, because it's, feminine and masculine. But anyway, I don't know. And that makes our meeting with the world, real meeting with the world, based on the fact that we don't know. So Rosh Hashanah is the quintessential moment of meeting the world, ourselves, and its potential. And it has to be hidden. Has to be hidden. That's the shorsh. That's the root of what Rosh Hashanah, where we meet Rosh Hashanah. Um, and in order to meet Rosh Hashanah in the real way, we need to do some things that give us the both the strength and the willingness and the real experience of not knowing. So there's a few things that we do, and I'm going to sort of try to take us through a few of them, some of them. I don't know if I can get through everything. The first thing that we do, or I should say, the first thing I'm going to say about Rosh Hashanah is you have to be happy. Special mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah to be happy. Now, the rabbis learned this from a verse in Nehemiah. It was a very, 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 very intense story of how the Jews came back from Babylon. We were in exile for 70 years, and not everybody came back. In fact, the majority of the Jews did not come back to Israel, did not come back to build the temple. We sort of finished exile, but most Jews decided to stay in exile. And those that came back was a very traumatic experience for several reasons. One of them is that many of them were intermarried. And Ezra, one of his first things was, okay, anybody who's intermarried has to get divorced. I mean, we're not going to rebuild the Jewish kingdom, with all these mixed marriages. So it's a very, very painful experience. And the Jews who came back, another thing that's painful is they remember how it was, and this new temple, it's just not on the level. So everybody's sort of traumatized. That's the experience that's being described in Nehemiah. And so Nehemiah said, it was Rosh Hashanah, and Nehemiah said, go eat, eat sweet things and drink, savory drinks, because chedvat Hashem himauschem, because being happy with God is your strength. And that's a verse that Nehemiah said on Rosh Hashanah. He said, Rosh Hashanah, you have to be happy. Special mitzvah. Every holiday there's a mitzvah to be happy, but especially on Rosh Hashanah. And the explanation again there is because being happy is the way to be strong. Or in other words, to tap into what I really have that allows me to experience whatever it is that God is going to give me to experience as meaningful and real and deep. In fact, the Gemara says something crazy. Gemara says that when a person experiences bad things, they have to bless God just like they bless for good things. So it's a Mishnah in Brachot. And so the Gemara says, wait a minute. We don't do that. Because everybody knows that if you have hard things happen, then you make this kind of blessing, which is Baruch Dayan Emet. Blessed is the true judge. That's what we say when funerals, that's what we say when people, pass away. And then when there's good things, we say Baruch Hatov Emetiv. Wow, this is so awesome. So how can you tell me to make the same blessing? How can you tell me that? So the Gemara says, you're right, you make a different blessing, but the shared experience of both those blessings is to accept it with joy. That's what it means to bless God for the good, for the bad, just like for the good, is that you accept it all with joy. Okay, very hard to do. I'm not saying it's so easy, it's a very intense, difficult thing to say. But that's, in other words, somewhere at the core of our relationship with life, with the world, and with God who created the world, is that I make a choice to live with God b'simcha. Now, it's not easy. What do you mean not easy? It's terribly hard. everybody depending on their own, it's not just terribly hard for people when there's like these crazy wars and stuff. I mean, it's hard even emotionally. Every person has their own story that this thing is just impossible for me to accept. I can't handle it, right? It's not just on the macro level, even on the micro level, it's very hard. But that choice means what it means when we say on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem Melech, God is king. What does that mean? God is king. It's if you believe in God as an infinite God who has all power, then of course God is king. I mean, it doesn't need me to say that. In fact, like what's this whole story that I'm supposed to coronate God? I mean, come on. Yeah. God's in charge. God runs the world. God chooses what happens. I mean, so of course God is king. What does that have to do with me? So what it has to do with me is, do I receive that and accept it? Or do I say, you know what? God is king, but I can't handle this. So, okay, go ahead, be king. Just don't leave me out of it, right? Because it's too painful. It's too hard. It's too complicated. It's I don't understand. So really to have a day that says Hashem Melech, this is our job on Rosh Hashanah, to make God king, to make God the ruler, is to say, I receive and accept whatever it is that God does in the world. That's Hashem Melech. And you know what? It's not just in the macro. It's in my life too. And it's this very special thing, all of this period of time from the first day of Elul, which was already 26 days ago, until Yom Kippur, is a time that we call a time of tshuva, a time of repentance, a time of returning to God. It's a time of slichot. There's these special prayers that, that all of the Jewish people are already saying now of asking for forgiveness. And there's only one day out of all those days where we don't relate to that at all. It's called Rosh Hashanah. Well, it's actually 2 days. 2 days Rosh Hashanah. You don't do slichot. There's no forgiveness. There's no trying to what's the word? Confess and say, okay, I really wanted to change this. That's not what we do on Rosh Hashanah. The prayers aren't about that at all. Because on Rosh Hashanah, that's not the point. The point isn't like it is on Yom Kippur, okay, we really want to fix our relationship. No, first of all, I want to say, I am in complete relationship with God. God's in my life, and I accept that, and I accept it with joy. And whatever, let me bring in another word that's usually used with Rosh Hashanah that I know people, I'm sure people have heard, it's called Yom Hadin. It's called the Day of Judgment. But even that actually has very little mention in the prayers. It's mentioned, but sort of minorly. I'll get to in a minute what we do talk about in the prayers, because that's a really tremendous thing. But okay, it's the Day of Judgment, but we don't sort of talk about that. What does that mean, Day of Judgment? It means what expresses God's rulership over the world is that God makes the judgment. Actually, if you look in the Tanakh, and look in the Bible, over and over, that's what defines a king. There's many kings that are described in and what defines a king or a leader is shofet. That's the person who judges. That's what a leader is someone who makes a call and says, this is the way it's going to be. And that's what gives malchut to people. You can make the judgment. And so therefore, on Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment, we say, okay, whatever it is you say. Now, of course, we want it to be something we're praying in our hearts. It should be something that's sweet, that we can understand, that we can work with, that, whatever the judgment is, it's something that's going to help us grow in a revealed way. No, for sure. But whatever it is, you're the king. And that's work. It's very, very hard work inside. But to the degree that I do that, and the degree that I make Hashem Melech, is the degree to which I say, I accept life joyfully. I do. And it doesn't mean I don't feel pain. It doesn't mean I don't ask God, really pray, break my heart open, please. Sweeten our lives, sweeten the world, okay, there's all these people want to kill us, but can I change? Maybe they can change, I mean, I don't know how many of you are in that experience. I mean, here in Israel, that's like sort of the, we're surrounded by people who really, some people who really hate us, and love to, and it's not only that that's scary or that's difficult, it's painful because, God, what is this in your world? What kind of world do you have? Why are there these people? Why is there that energy? Where is that? This is your world. And if I can, for one day, say 2 days again, say, I really accept it. I accept it. That's your judgment. This is the way that you understand the world is supposed to. And I now have created a basis for a relationship. I'll tell you, one of the biggest Rebbes, the Hasidic Rebbes, is Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. So Rabbi Yitzchak of Berdichev is very famous for his standing up to God. There's even a story, he put God on trial, found God, responsible, and therefore said, you now, the judgment in the trial against you is you have to bring redemption because you're chayav. That's so. When you hear that, you think, okay, this is somebody who's got an issue with God. But if you look there's a book of his teachings, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. All of his teachings, they're all pure faith, pure connection to God. There's no judgment, there's no anger, there's no, and you say to yourself, well, how did he get to be this person who's also all the time claiming or, sort of pushing against God? And that's because the root of his relationship with God is, I'm with you. If I'm with you, we can talk about things, If I'm not with you, in other words, if I'm angry, then, and I haven't accepted that I'm with God and God is with me, and whatever God's going to do in the world is something that I accept, I'm going to live with, I can't start the conversation. Can't start it because I'm not even in what's the word? The word that's coming to my mind, it's not such a good phrase. Or I'm not even in the playing field. I'm not there. So that's Rosh Hashanah. After Rosh Hashanah, we're going to have 8 more days where we're going to be begging God, or we're going to be crying, we're going to be confessing, we're going to be, Yom Kippur, please just, Kotveinu lechaim, write us for life, But that's, again, because it's rooted in Rosh Hashanah, which is, I accept God in my life. And I joyfully take on whatever it is that God is bringing. Okay. So that's, just to tie it back in for a second, that's the secret. Because we don't understand. There's no way we're going to understand. We will understand a little bit more as we learn. we'll understand a little bit more as we get closer, but it's still infinitely way beyond us, And there's always going to be things and dimensions and aspects of life that we say, okay, God, this is your secret, and we would like to be in the secret with you. So that's the one thing, right? We need to have simcha on Rosh Hashanah. Here's another thing. You have to hear the shofar. You have to hear the shofar. The shofar is, as I mentioned before, it's a voice without words. It's a call that comes from a much more core place before words even begin. We don't have words. Words are creation, and words are actually sort of a later step of creation, because in order to have words, you have to have thoughts, and then those thoughts have to translate, and they have to go through. This is the way my mind works, so just bear with me, but our mouth is actually not such a big thing. In order for words to come out of our mouth, it goes through this process of constriction, because even if you look on our body, right, like my heart, for example, which is where my feelings are, or my head, where my thoughts are, is bigger than my mouth. Or I'm just being very, what do you call it, picturesque, but let me sort of explain what I mean is, when I speak, those words mean less than what I meant. I say, I love you. Okay, it's nice. I mean, what are those words anyway, Does that convey in any way, shape, or form what it is I feel? Well, it's kind of hinting to that, but it's not really, So words are a very late stage in creation. They come after experience, thought, inner awareness. What we touch more core when we talk about, how did I say, primal, or beginning place, is we touch a voice. If you look, it's a very amazing thing. The Torah tells us about that first day that God created Adam and Chava, and then everybody knows what happened on that day. It wasn't such a successful day, to put it mildly. 6,000 years we're still trying to fix something that happened on that day. So the Torah says that when they ate from the tree, so they were they all of a sudden got ashamed. They went to hide in the tree, and then God comes and says, "Hey, where are you?" And what does Adam Arishon? I don't know if you know what did Adam say to God? I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid. I heard your voice. In fact, can you hear me now? Oh, okay. Earlier it says, Kol Hashem Elokim mithalech bagan. God's voice was walking around the garden. In fact, we don't really meet God, we meet God's voice. That's what happened on Mount Sinai, right? We didn't really see God, we saw God's voice. The most core experience that we have of what it means divine reality is a voice. And the voice, again, before the words, before the constriction, a voice that's resonates inside is the core place that that we can begin to relate. Now, if it doesn't have words, we don't understand it. But that's fine on Rosh Hashanah, because we're not about understanding on Rosh Hashanah. Remember, we're in the secret world. We're trying to open up and experience and touch and receive, but it's not about words. In fact, I'll tell you something. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, I don't know how many people here have a connection or don't. Rabbi Nachman said that the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the greater a person you are, the less you talk. It's not a talking day. You know, I don't want to. It's not a imperative. You know, I'm not putting on anybody, and you know, everybody have to sort of live your life and be with and anybody has kids. You know, you can't just be quiet all day long. But there's this place of I'm not talking today. I'm more in an inner place of imagining, thinking, feeling, yearning, and that's a place of kol. And the shofar touches it because it's such a primal, again, one of those myriad explanations of what the shofar is about is that the shofar is a cry. It's a cry, right? There's different kinds of crying. There's wailing, there's sobbing, and that's, sort of the shvarim and the trua, and these are different experiences of crying. That's how it's described in the Gemara. It's a cry, which everybody knows is the first thing that a baby does when a baby comes out. And if a baby doesn't, we make sure that they cry, right? That's the doctor's job, is to make sure the baby cries. That's terrible, right? But it's some way of expressing this inner place before you translate it into words. And that cry opens something, and I'll tell you 3 dimensions of what it opens. One level is, of course, it opens our hearts. It says there's a pasuk in Amos. It says, "Hayitaka shofar ba'ir ve'am lo yicharadu." Can a shofar be blown and people don't tremble? I mean, if it doesn't do anything to you, then there's something blocked up there. I mean, shofar it's this call, it's this voice, that just. So that's the first thing. Another thing that the shofar does is that it takes you out of verbal, intellectual. You're not there. There's nothing to understand about a shofar blow. There's nothing to understand about it. It's to hear and be in it, right? And the third thing that it does, the Zohar says, it is there's an echoing voice that comes in from above. In other words, it's an opening to hear and touch something that it can't open in other ways. Now, this, of course, most of us, okay, what do you mean? I hear the shofar, that's what I hear. But if that shofar has any resonance in you, it means that there's another voice that's resonating. There's something's opened up. And the Zohar says that voice is a heavenly voice, which is basically creating, there's one of the most beautiful verses in the Psalms, in Tehillim, is Tehom el Tehom Kore B'kol Tzinorecha. Tehom is a depth of, abyss even, And so the depth calls out to the depth. The depth below comes up to depth above, right? There's this call that happens between us and God, that happens between us and other people. And by the way, one thing the Zohar says about Rosh Hashanah, don't be alone. It's not an alone day. There are times that it's good to be alone, if even sometimes important to be alone, not Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is, and people know that, right? A lot of people, who don't go to shul ever, they go on Rosh Hashanah, right? And there's it's Rosh Hashanah is a gathering time. And part of that is because it's a resonant time. You can't just be in yourself. It's a resonant. There's something supposed to resonate here. Of course, it resonates between us and God, but it's resonating between us also. Okay, it's getting late, at least over here. So I want to get to just to talk about two things in the Rosh Hashanah prayer. And I'll tell you something. I'm going to talk about two things which are seemingly minor because they happen in the less intense, so to speak, or at least that's the way it's understood, the less intense part of the prayers, which is the nighttime prayers. Because everybody knows the main prayers is the daytime, shacharit, and then musaf, and it's all the shofar blowing and all the. So I'm not going to talk about that, at least today. But I do want to talk about two special things that happen at the night in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah night. And I'll tell you, Rosh Hashanah night, even though, again, most holidays, Shabbos, always the prayers that are more significant are the daytime prayers. But the nighttime is the beginning. And if Rosh Hashanah is the beginning, then Rosh Hashanah night is sort of the core of the whole year. The first night of Rosh Hashanah is like that. If you can be in that prayer, you open the year. You really do, even the daytime, even though it's like, okay, shofar and all, but the nighttime, if you can touch it, it's a very, very, very deep prayer. And I just wanted to share with you two things that are special about the nighttime prayer of Rosh Hashanah. And if we can touch it a little bit this year, I'm telling you, I tell you just a really honest feeling I have. I feel like if we can quote unquote do Rosh Hashanah right, the world's going to change. It's not, Yom Kippur is really the really holy day. Everybody knows Simchat Torah. We had it last year, was an intense day, but it's the highest. But really, 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 if we could really be in Rosh Hashanah, we can change the world. We can change ourselves. That's my feeling this year very much. And so I'm sort of hoping to invest a lot in Rosh Hashanah. But I'll just share with you the night of Rosh Hashanah, which is a really, it's a very special time. And everybody knows at the end of the prayer of Rosh Hashanah night, there's this minhag that everybody goes up to everybody else in the shul and says, you should have the Shana Tova, Tikatev, Techatem, and you should be written and sealed for the best life. And it's this, in at least every time I've been anywhere for Rosh Hashanah night, I always feel like, the heart's really open. It's like, oh, I don't know what's going to be tomorrow. I don't know how intense, but now, let's just have the sweetest year, and that happens in the meal also. Okay, but I'm stepping back before that. The Rosh Hashanah prayers, the unique thing about them starts in what's called the Amidah, the silent prayer. Everybody knows the silent prayer has a number of blessings, and on holidays there's 7 blessings. But the first 3 blessings are set. Everybody, we say the same blessing every day of the year, 3 times a day. So the first one is the blessing for Avot, for the forefathers, and and our connection with them. And the second one's called Gvurot, and it's about all the amazing, intense things that God does in the world. And the third one's called Kedusha. And almost all year round, the blessing of Kedusha is very, very short. It's 1 line, and it basically says, you're holy, your name is holy, and holy people praise you every day. Now, I don't know what that means. What does it mean to be holy? What's that word, kadosh? But on Rosh Hashanah and then again in Yom Kippur, but it's really rooted in Rosh Hashanah. That blessing is very long. The blessing of Kedusha, it's like all of a sudden, let's open up and try to understand what this means and what we're asking for. Okay, Kedusha. Kedusha means holiness, right? Which again is a sort of amorphic word. I don't know what that means. It means something that's sort of beyond where it is, it's but we don't really know what it means. So the prayer is expanded, and it's a very beautiful thing, and I don't have time to actually go through it. Everybody would look at us at a machzor, but so I'm just going to sort of touch it a little bit and open up this. So basically what happens is we say that line that we say all year round: you're holy, your name is holy, holy people praise you. And then the next line is Dor vador hamlichu la'el ki hu levado maron v'kadosh. Every generation should make God king because he alone is awesome and holy. So the opening of trying to open up, what does it mean, holiness? And that's really what it means to be, that Hashem is king, apparently. It's connected to this, is that God alone is holy. It means there's a place in reality that nothing else can enter. And if you want to be holy, you somehow have to open up to that reality where there's a place where God alone exists. We don't know that reality. We know the world where even people who believe in God, there's us and there's God. And there's all kinds of, animals and fish and all kinds of things, also, right? But what do you mean? No, hu levado. So just try to even close your eyes for a second. Just imagine, okay, God alone is holy. God alone is holy. Try to be, for a second, put yourself aside, put the world aside, and just think there's God alone. Okay, that's the beginning of the opening of this bracha of Kedusha. And then the Gemara, the blessing continues and says, and so let your name be sanctified on the Jewish people and on Yerushalayim and on the Mashiach and on in other words, once I accept that holiness derives from this place where there's only God, now I'm asking it to be drawn down into a world that I know in the most highest aspects of the world that I know. Into the when you say I'm asking God to sanctify the kingdom of Mashiach, I'm basically saying, okay, now I'm going to imagine this holiness being drawn down into the most high places that I know. But that's just the first step. We're not even, we haven't even gotten anywhere yet. Because then the next paragraph says, and please bring your fear and awe to everything in the world and everyone in the world. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Things have changed. Okay. Bring your holiness to your awareness to every single thing that was created in the world, and everything should get together and serve you. Oh, okay, this I can talk about already. It's not just God's holy in the highest places. God can be holy in the whole world. And now this is something again, in the reality that we live here in Israel, it's sometimes hard to say this prayer because it says, Al kol ma'asecha, everything that you created, including those crazy, hateful terrorists that are trying to kill us, including all those areas in the world that we call God-forsaken, a wrong word, but we use that phrase, including every aspect of life where it seems that is antithetical to holiness. And I'm praying that those places should all of a sudden have an awe and a fear of God and want to serve God. It's the one time a year that the Jewish people explicitly pray for the whole world. It's an amazing thing. We have the Jewish people as a people have a lot of work to do and things to fix, and we pray for the Jewish people. That's big enough, But there's one time a year that the prayers are explicitly talking about our dream for the whole world, and I want to share with you something. There's a prayer that's said at the end of every single prayer all year round. It's become so regular that people don't even say the words with meaning anymore. It's sort of just said it's called Aleinu. And if anybody ever read that prayer, Aleinu, you would see that it's actually the biggest vision that we have for the whole world. It's like a dream. And I'll tell you something funny about that dream. That prayer comes from Rosh Hashanah. Its origin is a prayer that we say on Rosh Hashanah. I mean, its origin is it was written by Moshe and Yoshua. That's our tradition, but it was set into our prayers as part of the Rosh Hashanah prayer, and then we took it and added it on to every single prayer of the year. Because in Rosh Hashanah, what it means that God is holy, what it must mean that God is holy, is that there's a potential for the whole world to be aware of God. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Hashem Tzvaot. Holy, holy, holy is Hashem of hosts. Melo kol haaretz kvodo. The whole world is filled with God's glory. Holiness means filling up the whole world. That's what holiness means. Or filling up whatever space that we're filling up. To be holy and to be connected to God's holiness means that at least in the area that I'm existing right now, God can totally be there. And since we're praying on Rosh Hashanah that God's malchut should be, rulership should be recognized in the whole world, we also want that holiness to come down to everything. So the first step is the dream world, right? The aspects of life that are the highest in our perspective. Please let your holiness come there, but please let your holiness come to everything. Everything should feel awe and awareness and fear of God so that we can all come together and serve. And then the next step, we haven't finished yet. Because the next step is V'chen ten kavod le'amecha. And now let's talk about the Jewish people, not in that high dream state, but just talk about us. What do we want for the Jewish people? Well, we want the Jewish people, and specifically the Jewish people who are connected to what the Jewish people are about, which is yearning for God, which is wanting to bring God's light into the world. Let that be raised up in the forefront. Give it kavod. Let's see how a people who really, really want to be God's people in the world, let's see how that manifests. That's, once we were talking about the whole world, but now let's focus in a little bit on our people. Simcha la'artzecha v'sason lirecha. And of course, that would be tremendous joy. If we could really have pitchon peh lamiyachalim lach, those who yearn for God should have be able to open their mouths and actually express. Okay. And then the next circle is Uvechen Tzadikim Yeru V'Yismachu. Now let's talk about holy people. Holy people means people who their whole life is given over to this vision. And therefore, when they see it, realize they're going to be really happy. But you see, all of these circles, the circle of, our dream circle, and the circle of all the people in the world, and the circle of the Jewish people, and the circle of the tzaddikim are all circles that are related to me. I mean, all of those. There's a part of me that's part of those tzaddikim. And there's a part of me that's part of the Jewish people, obviously. There's a part of me who's part of your creation. And there's a part of me that's part of Mashiach. And I need to, again, this is very much in the prayer. It has a lot to do with how we imagine it. But I'm praying about how this holiness that starts with Hu Levado, like just only God is holy, can bring that down into all these circles that are related to who we are. And then we come full circle. And the last paragraph says, and let you be the only king of the whole world. And that word levadecha again, we're back to the alone. But, when we say God is alone, the first time you sort of imagine God separate from the world. When you say God after you've gone through all these circles, you see you alone, including the whole world. It's just you. After we've gone through all these circles, we're back to there's just you. But we're all in there, It's not you alone as opposed to us, it's you alone with us. And that's what we pray for when we talk about Kedusha. And that opening up happens on Rosh Hashanah. It's all of a sudden, wow, what does it really mean that we want to be holy, or want the world to be holy, or want to be connected to holiness? Okay, I'll say one more short thing. You know what? Anybody have questions? I mean, it's okay. You don't have to, or if you do and you want to think about it, you want to send me a question after, it's all fine. I just, wanted to open that space, in case somebody said burning, I've been sitting here for an hour and just waiting to ask something. If you just close your mouth and, so, okay, so I'm going to say 2 words about the really special moment in the nighttime prayer of Rosh Hashanah for me. And that's after the silent prayer. There's this one chapter of Tehillim, of the Psalms that we say on Rosh Hashanah night. It's chapter 24, and it goes like this: LeDavid Mizmor LaHashem Haaretz Imloa. Like God, David Amel singing, saying, God, it's the world and everything in it is God's. And then I can't go through every stage. It would take me like at least 4 hours, but I'll just say one more line from this verse. Se'u sha'arim rashechem v'inas'u pitchei olam v'yavo melech hakavod. So this means literally, gates, raise yourself up, and be raised up, openings of the world, and let God, the King of the world, come in. And that's one more really, really important image for Rosh Hashanah. The world, the whole world, everything in the world is an opening and a gateway. But it needs to be lifted up so we can allow Melech HaKavod to come through the gateway. In other words, the reality of what everything in the world is an opening for God to come in, for us to be aware of God, for us to allow the experience of connection with God to come in. Everything is a gateway. Everything is Pitrei Olam. But it needs to be related to that, related to like that, and to be lifted up to the place where I don't just see, a desk and I say, okay, the desk is a desk, it's a piece of wood, and I write on it. No, this is an opening. This food I'm eating, it's not just some, bunch of vitamins and whatever it is. It is an opening to experience how God comes into the world. With food, we express that through our blessings. With experiences, we express that through prayers. But everything has a potential to be an opening to connection. And so we are praying to raise that up. Su Sharim Rashechem. Okay, so that was sort of a tip of the iceberg kind of thing. Just an opening. Hopefully there's something to take for Rosh Hashanah for anyone here. And I want to add, so everybody knows there's pain in the world. There's pain in Jewish people and in the land of Israel, and everybody knows there's, the world's not a very clear place now. But if we can step in and be with God in Rosh Hashanah and imagine how the world potentially is opening up and not just, falling apart, is a very powerful potential for us to feel the world differently, and as a result for us to do things in the world that will change the world. So I bless everybody to have a real strong Rosh Hashanah, whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, however you get into the prayers and not get into the prayers, how many shofar blasts you hear, or whatever it is, but it's the beginning, and beginnings always have infinite potential. And please God, this year should be infinitely better than the last one, and more move us forward more powerfully and sweetly.
Amazing.
Shana Tova. I know anybody who signed up for next week. So, next week is next year, is a universe away from here. So, but it'd be great to see anybody. And again, if there's anything that comes up, questions, want to say something, or, please feel free to write or comment. And Leah, do you want to say anything, or? Okay. And
Just that it's an hour earlier next Sunday. It's at 10 Israel time. So everybody, wherever you are, 1 hour before that. So,
and if there's
not
any,
so bad.
if this thing opens up for you, maybe we'll find a way to do this more often next year. Anyway, Shana Tova, Ktiva v'Chatima Tova.
Yeah, if people we are really
Tova.
thinking about doing Shana Tova. We are really thinking about doing that. So if people want that, then let us know. Okay, Shana Tova.
Thank you, guys.
Shana Tova.